Kia ora and welcome to the Niche Cast. We're from the niche-cast.com, where we like to dabble in a bit of Aotearoa sport. And if we're talking Aotearoa sport, we're talking Aotearoa sporting athletes. And if we're talking Aotearoa sporting athletes, we're talking Aotearoa sporting athlete names. And this is something that I just realized, because we got some awesome names floating around. We got Dimitrik, we got Ali, we got Zion, we got Leka, we got Nando, we got Mali, we got Liberato, we got Preet, we got Nancy, we got Missy, we got Ocean, we got Flora, we got Addie, we got Jeet, we got Ish, we got Ajaz, and I could go on and on. I just enjoy those names we've got around Aotearoa sport, and I didn't even include Marama, Katane. There's some fantastic names going around Aotearoa sport, and then you do get the old white bread. Oh, that's a... I'm searching for a different term. There we go. The plain Jane, half Pākehā, half Palangi name, Chris Wood, who did score another goal for Nottingham Forest. So that is good stuff happening there. Shout out to everyone with a funky-ass name in Aotearoa sport. I do see you. We do have some very impressive names, and it's good to type them out. It's good names to type out when you're doing your blogs, when you're doing the newsletter. Everything we do, you do go deep into the Aotearoa sporting names. But of course, we did have a goal from Chris Wood this morning. 4th consecutive Premier League goal. And he's equaled his best season tally of goals already. 16 games to go. Chris Wood scored against, is that Southampton?
That's the one.
A little bit of razzle-dazzle outside the box, passes it out wide, and of course he gets the ball back in the box, header into the bottom left, big goal from the Woodsman. You are the Chris Wood whisperer, the whispering Wood. What do you reckon about this latest goal? And do you have any other fantastic first names to add that I overlooked? Specifically basketball, because the only one that comes to mind may be a Dante Russo Nance, but other than that, couldn't think of any other basketball names off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, we can chuck some Hiram in there. That's a pretty good name. There's basketball also
Elliott
has a few. Yeah, Mania Elliott's a good one. Basketball has a few Sams and a Steven, and so you're getting a bit of the those are more in the Chris category again as well. But my favorite name thing isn't actually a first name thing. It's the middle name aspect of how there's two guys in the All Whites whose middle name is Zen. There's Nando Zen Pijnaker, and there's, I think it is Joe Zen Robert Bell or something. He has two middle names, but somehow Joe Bell and Nando Pijnaker both have the middle name Zen, Z-E-N. So nice and mindful of them, I suppose. Good stuff there. Yeah, Chris Wood has he's equaled his best tally in a Premier League season, 14 goals. He did it last season with Nottingham Forest. He also did it in his best year with Burnley. He has 16 games to go with which to add to that. At the start of the season, he was talking, like he did interviews, he's talking about like, well, my target is to try and get to 20 goals this season. And at the time, that seemed like, yeah, sure. Like, you believe in yourself, sweet as. That's cool. Little bit of an ambitious target. Right now, it feels like he might push 25. He might push closer to 30. I mean, he probably won't get that far, but he should get to 20. He should get to that mark. And there's only, well, I looked this up not that long ago. I think there's 50 players who have scored 20 goals in a Premier League season. So this is just Premier League. This is an all English top division, but the 30 odd years or whatever it is that the Premier League's been around. Chris Wood could join that club. Chris Wood's also getting closer and closer every week, it seems, to catch in. Because, whenever he scores, you get a bunch of people around New Zealand looking up the Premier League list of most all-time goals. Oh, he's up to 71st equal, or he's up to 68th equal kind of thing with each thing, which seems like a bit I don't know. That seems too scarce for me to care too much about him climbing. He's not in the top 10 or anything like that. But I am keeping a close eye out on when he gets to 92 Premier League goals, which will probably be next season. I don't think he'll quite get there this year. He'd need to score another 10 or so from here to get there. But if he gets to 92 goals, he equals Mark Viduka, who's the top scoring Australian in the Premier League history. So if we can say that Chris Wood has then become the all-time leading Australasian goal scorer, not just in the Premier League, not just the top Oceania guy as he is right now, I think that's something a little bit more substantial to hang a hat on. He scored in 4 consecutive games, by the way, which is the second time this season that he scored in 4 consecutive Premier League games. He did it once last season as well, and he also did that once with Burnley. So the 4th time in his career he scored in 4 consecutive games. He's never gone 5 though. So that's the one for the next game to keep an eye out. Whatever has swings around next weekend. I don't think there's midweek games this week. So next weekend he's going for 5 in a row, going for another personal best there. And if he does do that, it will also, of course, be his personal best for goals in a season, because that'd be his 15th for the season. He's got 14 from 22 games. He's 16 games to go. We're only like 60% of the way through the season. There's a huge chunk left to go, and he keeps scoring goals. He just keeps doing them Chris Wood goals as well. This one was just like prime Woodsy. Yeah, like there's a little bit of hold up play, nice switch out to the side, but then as soon as he does that, he's gassing it to get into the middle on the end of the cross, which he does. Runs into a defender, shoves him out of the way, gets up there, wins the header, puts it in the bottom corner. A little bit of a fingertip from the keeper, but couldn't keep it out. Just prime Chris Wood areas, and he's doing it every week at the moment. Like there's at least one of those chances every week. He actually missed a good chance later on in this game, and also they had a goal disallowed where he was called offside from a free kick, and they said he was interfering. He was offside, but they said he was interfering, which I thought was pretty tenuous. But so it goes. There's Nottingham Forest went on and won anyway, so they won 3-2 against Southampton. They have taken 34 points out of a possible 36 points against teams currently in the bottom half of the table. So they're beating everyone they're expected to win, and they're winning games against a few teams they're not expected to beat as well. So I think they're second equal now. Arsenal went back ahead of them, but Arsenal only drew. So Forest are level but behind on goal difference. So they're second equal but third, which is still heavily embedded in the Champions League places.
You just dropped like 50 facts about Chris Wood and Nottingham Forest there, so that's good stuff. You're obviously fired up for Chris Wood scoring a goal. I will tinker with something you just said there, because you said Chris Wood ran to the middle. But he's in the middle the whole time. He does not leave the space of the goalposts. Yeah. He moves backwards to get the ball to distribute it wide, and that's in the middle. That's top of the box.
Yeah, you're right. He actually just drops vertical. He doesn't swing.
He goes from top of the box straight into the penalty spot, gets the ball back, scores the goal. So that's just prime Chris Wood. Fantastic movement, but there's not a lot of movement. He's just going back and forward in the middle of the field, and his teammates know how to give him the ball. What's the status of the Chris Wood offside number this season? Do you have that handy? Because it is something very interesting. When Chris Wood wasn't scoring as many goals, he was the king of the offside. But that one could draw a connection between being offside a whole lot and not scoring many goals. Like, that's not great striker play, is it? If you're offside, you're ruining it for your team. It's like bowling a no ball, maybe. You do want a couple because you want to push the line, figuratively and literally. You want to push the line. So you do want a couple no balls every so often, but you don't necessarily want them all, because those no balls are runs and they stop your wickets. Like an offside does stop a goal. So I'm curious to know if Chris Wood is scoring more goals with more or less offsides than usual.
Yeah, it was in the Burnley days where he was getting the most offsides. And then when he's playing with Newcastle, they were asking him to do a slightly different role, and so he wasn't getting offside very much. And then he had a year or so where he wasn't playing as many minutes, so he couldn't get as many offsides. You'll be pleased to know this season, right back up there. He's second in the Premier League for offside so far. He's been offside 20 times in his 22 games. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's out in front with 27. he's getting offside and he's not scoring that many goals. Chris Wood's getting offside and he's scoring a lot of goals. There was a goal, you know, like I said, there's a goal today which got disallowed because of him being offside, but also for the most part, bigger picture aspect there is you get a lot of if he's getting called offside a lot, that means he's hovering around the top of the defensive line. He's getting as far forward as he can, which means he's trying to get as close to the goal as he can, which is ties it back into what he's saying about his movements, because he's not the bursting sprint and behind the defense that you get from some guys. He's little subtle movements. He's very efficient movements. It's like a couple meters here or there, just get just enough space in order to be able to get a clean swing of the leg or a jump up unobstructed to win the header or whatever it takes to get on the end of a cross, or just pounce on a loose ball or something in the area. Like sharp, smart, anticipating, efficient movements is basically his textbook at the moment. Pretty much every goal he scores, you see something like that, where there's just a clever little burst or a late step sideways or whatever it takes to just create that little bit of separation from his defender, get a shot away. That's what he does. That's what he's been doing. Did it again this morning, scored another goal this morning, and had got to add to his offside tally this morning as well.
Fabulous, Chris Wood. Nice little introduction there for today's podcast. We're recording this on Monday, January the 20th, and we're from the niche-case.com, where we go in depth about Aotearoa sport. Of course, today is a Monday as well, so we'll be sending out our newsletter with lots of notes about Aotearoa sport from the weekend, and we focus on the big four: cricket, basketball, football, and rugby league. But I am keeping an eye on other Aotearoa sporting matters. Of course, we do have other little things we touch on, maybe a bit of one-out fighting always goes well. But I was a curious observer of the sailing, the Sail GP in Auckland, and I'd like to say that big sailing guy. Obviously, you have to be a big sailing guy in Aotearoa, and because we're surrounded by water, so it just goes without saying. But I think the Sail GP is better than the America's Cup, and I'm going to put that out there as one of my first hot takes, because the Sail GP, like, if they're coming back to Auckland every year, that is automatic connection to the Aotearoa sailing fan, and we know Aotearoa loves a bit of sailing. So if the Sail GP is servicing that fan every single year, based on what I saw, I think it was last year in Littleton, Christchurch, and now they've come up to Auckland. You do that in the Auckland harbour, the Hauraki Gulf, Waitemata, whatever it is. If you put some of those sailing boats in that harbour, it's entertaining, and it's good stuff. So shout out to the Sail GP, and I think that is more. It's got a bigger ceiling, more potential than the America's Cup, because you might be like me and you've got no idea what's happening with the America's Cup, whereas it's pretty clear what is happening with the Sail GP. And I also noted, like, there's a lot of anxiety around the tennis tournaments, because you get the big names being knocked out and who's coming, who's not coming. I don't know, Kiwis just show up no matter what, It's the same with the Blackcaps. You don't need to be playing the small three cricketing nations to get a big cricket crowd in Aotearoa. We had T20s and ODIs against Sri Lanka that were consistently sold out, jam-packed. And Kiwis showed up for that tennis tournament, both tennis tournaments in Auckland, regardless of whether there were big names or not. Like, the tickets were sold. People were showing up. And that got me thinking, like, the only sport, the only code that is really worried about crowd attendances right now is rugby union. So there's something we've been tracking, because we've been tracking the Warriors crowds. We've been tracking the Auckland FC crowds, the football crowds, tracking the best of our ability, the cricket crowds. And Super Smash, you get some good crowds around there, especially out there in the regions. Even the NBL, the local NBL, decent crowds there. And I think, the only sport that is kind of worried about crowds is rugby union. So it's just an interesting little phase of attendance in Aotearoa sport. We'll get into mindfulness, but I've got these takes simmering with me over the weekend. So I do think the Sail GP will be is bigger than the America's Cup in Aotearoa. Bigger, better, best. I also think Nando Pijnaker of fantastic first name swag. I'm open to the idea. In fact, I do believe right now Nando Pijnaker is the best player for Auckland FC. And if he's the best player for Auckland FC, he is one of the best players in the A-League. Nando Pijnaker. Where does he rank for you as far as centre backs go? Because I think the centre back bracket is good because Sakai is probably the leading candidate for the best Auckland FC player, which makes him the Auckland FC representative in the best A-League player stakes. But Sakai wasn't playing on the weekend for their 3-0 win. So let's just stick with centre backs. Like, I'll say Nando Pijnaker, best player in the A-League. That's all good, but that's a sizzling one. Where does Nando Pijnaker rank for you for the best centre backs in the A-League and maybe even the best players in the A-League?
Well, there's another angle there as well, is where he ranks as a centre back for the All Whites, which is like they've kind of set up. I've seen this over the last few tours. Has just been they don't necessarily have a combination in mind, but they have the four best centre backs pretty well set up in mind. Well, and Nando Pijnaker is one of them. Michael Boxall is one of them. Long-time MLS veteran at this point. Boxall, experienced international player, like top. Talking about players like Kiwi sporting athletes with big mana, Michael Boxall is definitely one of those. Finn Surman is in the top four. Finn Surman, who was one of the best centre backs in the A-League, and therefore got a big move to the MLS as well, to where he's playing for Portland Timberers now. And then Tyler Bindon playing for Reading, who is getting linked all over the show to English Championship clubs. So that's the caliber that Nando Pijnaker's got himself alongside, and has been alongside for quite a while. Like he was in that criteria before Finn Surman or Tyler Bindon were in the squad. They're younger than him. So there's some company that he's keeping there. None of those guys are A-League battlers. Those guys are all players who have actually, well, Boxall played A-League, Finn Surman's played A-League. Both of them were excellent in the A-League, and therefore they've gone up and above. Nando Pijnaker currently being excellent in the A-League. So there's an idea of the trajectory, but it's also an idea of just like, yeah, he can be he can be and should be one of the best players in the competition for his position, if that's the kind of that's the tier that he sits in with the national team. You've got a little bit of a back and forth balance there. You can sort of compare that. I mean, Dan Hall was pretty good alongside him for the start of the season. But I think that also plays into Nando Pijnaker's reputation as well, is that Hall got injured. Hall was missing. They had to recalibrate. Nando Pijnaker stayed amazing without Dan Hall alongside him. They had a little bit of a dip there when Sakai was playing centre back, because A, you didn't have Sakai at right back, and B, he's just not quite as much of a natural centre back. He was out of position and they were getting caught out a bit. Tommy Smith stepped up alongside him, and they've gone back to being the defensively outstanding team that they were at the start of the season, in which, I mean, the fact that he scored 3 goals helps his cause as well. But even just speaking defensively, it feels like Pijnaker's been a bigger presence than Hall, because he's been there the whole time. He's been a bigger presence than Smith because he's been there the whole time. He's a centre back rather than a fullback, so he's a little bit more responsible for the things, but for the defensive record. But also, it feels like he has had more of an impact on the clean sheets that they're keeping, the defensive record that they have, than Alex Paulson has as well. And we know how good Alex Paulson is, but it doesn't feel like he's having to make the same saves necessarily as last season. He's still been fantastic, but I agree that Nando Pijnaker has probably been better. And I think I think I probably would lean towards him as like the mid-season player of the year for them so far. I mean, those 3 goals can't be discounted either, because those have all been very important goals. And he's just, he's dominating in a way where he's always looked like a player who has that potential, but either a mix between like maybe wasn't playing at the highest standards necessarily, or I think maybe because he's quite a big physical lad. I think maybe he also took a few years to sort of like physically come into his own and get his balance and his full fitness and stuff going. So I think that's helped him as well. He's just at that age now where he's ready to enter his peak as a centre back. So yeah, he's outstanding. Like he wins the challenges on the ground. He is fantastic in the air, and he's a good passer as well. And he's scoring goals. So what more can you possibly ask for from an A-League centre back?
One other, it's not really a hot take, but because I've actually settled it down. I've cooled it off. And we talked about it on Thursday, but I do right now, and I want to get this out into the world to set the tone for the Champions Trophy with the Blackcaps. I think the Blackcaps and the White Ferns, based on what happened last year and what's happened this summer for the Blackcaps, I have them as top 5 cricket teams in either silo, the men's or the women's, and that makes New Zealand top 5 in the world of cricket. Now, I have dropped that down. We were pushing top 2, we were pushing top 3, we were pushing top 4. Now we've dropped down to top 5. So I just want to make sure that that is out there ahead of the Champions Trophy, where the Blackcaps will be looking to crack these semi-finals. Do you have any counter notes, any counter points, or are you in agreement that those two teams, Blackcaps and White Ferns, are top 5 in their respective, whatever it is, men and women competition in rankings, and thus New Zealand is a top 5 cricketing nation? Which is obviously, like, if we're top 5 in the world of cricket with the smallest playing population, that is absolutely fantastic. So I don't really understand how anyone can be too negative about what New Zealand cricket is doing, given all that.
Yeah, I guess if we've gone from top 2 to top 5, there is a little bit of a downward thing there where you can find some negativity, but then all you have to do is look at the perspective that you just threw out there and like, yeah, but look at the population. Like, you can't expect to be that permanently because it's hard for the Blackcaps to replace players and whatever. Like, we just don't have as many to choose from. We can't have as much depth in the domestic scene, and yet I kind of feel like both of those things are actually somehow still strengths of
I was going to say, like, whatever you said there was kind of wrong, because we do have other players, we do have lots of depth, and we do produce Blackcaps performing at a high level every year.
Yeah, it's the expected thing of your of dealing with the smallest population of the cricketing playing nations, as those should be the problems, and yet they're kind of not the problems. It's the idea there, which is good stuff there. Do you have when you say top 5, do you have like an idea of who the other 5 teams are, or are you just sort of speaking generally? Because of course there are different formats which might not, South Africa's test team's coming pretty good at the moment. It doesn't necessarily mean their T20 team, or Sri Lanka's their thing seems to be less about format to format and more about home versus away. They're sort of ups and downs. But do you have it and with that sort of clarity of who the other teams, who are the 4 teams or so that are equal or better? I mean, Australia,
it factors in women's cricket. So we're going men and women, and we're going all formats. Australia is the best in the world, undeniable, undisputed.
Yeah.
I think South Africa, men and women, definitely in there. And I quickly overlooked England and India because I don't want to mention them in the early stages of these rankings. England, yep, fair play. They're decent, so they're at least top 5. India, I think you could say they are top 5. But those are, I think India and England are a little bit more fragile than many would assume. Like England men, it's not like they win every tournament. Like, they haven't really done very well in the World Test Championship. They sucked at the 2023 World Cup. Like, they have reviews after every major tournament, but I think they might be propelled by the women's team that is currently stinking it up in the Ashes. So it's all a bit fragile there for England. India women aren't as good as one would assume. India lost their home series against New Zealand 3-0. They lost the series against Australia 3-1. So, but they did win the T20 World Cup, and they made the final of the ODI World Cup. So fair play, the strength is there. The only teams like Sri Lanka doesn't really do it for me. West Indies doesn't do it. Pakistan is a bit crazy. So I think based on the populations, if I'm going full Aotearoa bias, I'm putting New Zealand top 3 ahead of England and India. But that's a little bit crazy. So I'll settle for top 5. That's what I'm saying. I'm just chilling out a wee bit, and I'll go with top 5 because the men and women are both punching well above that population base. And I'm feeling generous to South Africa. Australia, it's undeniable. And I think there is a highly contentious zone between South Africa, New Zealand, England, and India for men and women across the 3 formats. Good stuff there. Let's get a bit of mindfulness though to start we've gone well beyond the start, but I just need to feel that mindfulness in my bones.
Yeah, well, in light of the passing of cinematic legend Mr. David Lynch, who also happens to be quite a big proponent of meditation, but specifically transcendental meditation, which I've never really tried, which is like where you sort of repeat a phrase as you do it. But anyway, because of that, he has quite a few good mindful quotes in there, and even wrote a book about some stuff like this, in which there was the famous line, which was even quoted in one of his obituaries: "Keep your eye on the donut, not on the hole."
It's a bit of the old emptiness.
Yeah.
Which was, that might have been last week's mindfulness. So keep your eye on the donut and not the hole. Especially when that donut's pretty yummy. Like if you're just focusing on the yummy bit and you're not too worried about the less yummy bit because there's nothing there and it's the hole in the donut, then it's good stuff. Which is kind of just focus on the positive, focus on the what is there, whatever it may be. Obviously, big up to the newsletter, nichecage.substack.com. Sign up for completely free newsletter every Monday and Friday, full of Aotearoa sport. We do the Nichecast podcast on a Monday or Tuesday, depending on the schedule. And every Thursday, we record our bonus podcast, which goes out to the folks on Patreon and anyone with a paid Substack subscription. So you can upgrade your free Monday and Friday newsletter subscription to a paid Substack subscription to access the bonus podcast. And of course, Patreon is there to support our work straight up the guts, a couple of dollars a month, and we do that bonus podcast for you every week as well. You can make a donation through Buy Me a Coffee. Otherwise, your presence here on the audio platforms, where you might want to leave a 5-star review if you can, because that's helpful. And of course on YouTube, hit the like, subscribe. We're here doing our best for Aotearoa sport. And we have been tracking the New Zealand Breakers closely this season, as they have slipped from one of the best NBL teams to one of the worst NBL teams. But they did have a victory over the weekend, I believe, in which one of the Sams did pretty well, Sam Meninga. And this means that the Breakers are now 9-16. They are 1 spot ahead of Cairns, who are 5-19 at the bottom of the ladder, and they are 1 spot below Brisbane, who are 10-14. They are 3 wins out of the play-in tournament, so that seems unlikely, but they might go on a winning streak. I don't know if the mathematics is in their favour. At the top of the table, we've got Illawarra. We've talked about them a lot. Not many Kiwis, if any Kiwis, in Illawarra. And then Perth, with the one and only Hiram Harris, are second. Melbourne have slipped to fourth. They've got a big Kiwi crew. Sydney Kings, Leaf is there, and they are in third. So let's start with the Breakers win. First of all, break down the Kiwis in that game, and then have you seen anything in the Breakers win that might get you interested in a play-in tournament spot, and then we'll go into some of the Kiwis in the NBL.
Interested in a playing spot? No, because it's a nice one against Tasmania. It was Parker Jackson Cartwright's first game back, ironically against the team that he assaulted the ref against. Assaulted's maybe an exaggeration, but still, you don't touch the ref. It's a rule across sports. You got to know that. But yes, Sam Meninga was superb in that. He scored 29 points, new career high. I think it's the third time this season he's broken his own career high. It's only his second season in the NBL, but still 29 points is the highest scoring game by a New Zealander this season. Big stuff. 13 of 15 from the field as well. Hit I think 3 or 4 from 3-point range. So lovely work from Sam Meninga, who probably suffered more than most by the ways in which they had to tactically reshuffle to bring Taco Fall in, and Meninga's had to play off the bench a lot and whatnot. It's I guess there's some second season struggle type stuff in there anyway, where other teams are figuring out a little bit of what he likes to do, but he's for the most part been really good for them. He is their top is their top performing New Zealand player. Who was the main New Zealand signing that they made coming into this season. Big deal getting him out of his second year with Ken's Taipan's contract, signing him up, bringing him in. He's been not just really good as a player, but I think he's also been really good as a personality to have around a team that really needs some personalities, really needs that leadership, and the guys in the huddle who, other than the coach, you're going to say like, fellas, lock on here, get your head in the game kind of stuff. He's good with that kind of stuff, despite the fact that he's pretty young and pretty fresh to the competition. Great performance against Tasmania. Of course, the Breakers being the Breakers, they've already lost another game since then. So I think that leaves them, what'd you say, 3 games outside of the play-in, and they have 3 games left to play this season. So mathematically, I think they can still make it, but realistically, they're not going to. That's a ship that has sailed, but they also shouldn't come last, because at least the Cairns Taipans have been worse than them. But it is, it's a historic drop-off when you go from 7-3 sitting in first place, and now they're, 9-16 sitting in second to last. So it's been a tough slog, but there are little positives along the way. And Sam Meninga's performances, and particularly of late, like the last 3 or 4 games, I think when they lost on the weekend, he only had about sort of 10 points, 5 rebounds, something like that. But the 29-pointer before that was preceded by, I think it was a 19-pointer and a 24-pointer, something like that. Like he had a really nice little run of 3 or 4 games in a row where he's been quite resurgent for the Breaks. So they need to see a little bit of that. Maybe if their season's effectively gone, we might get a little bit more of some of those fringe guys. Max Starling's had good moments throughout the season. I think everyone can see he's played more than was expected to play. So he's obviously earned himself a little bit more favor. But if we could see maybe a couple of those development players, Kai Isaac, Carlin Davison, Alec McNaught, just like see a little bit more of those guys over the course, I wouldn't complain. But they're not going to make the play-ins, unfortunately. And well, unfortunately, but that's the moral take on the matter. The fact is they don't deserve to be there because they've lost way too many games. So that it just is what it is.
And they
focusing on the donut, not the whole here.
Well, they sabotaged their season as well, so they deserve to be where they are. So you said 7-3 to 9-16, which by my calculations is 2-13. Between those two imaginary zones. So that's a nice drop off for the Breakers. Who's your pick of the Kiwis? Specifically, let's go Perth, Sydney, Melbourne. Is there anyone in that Southeast Melbourne team? I don't think so. Maybe
Tom Vodanovic, but he's a edge of the not edge of the roster, but he's sort of like 8th or 9th in the rotation, so he doesn't necessarily get big minutes. He's just there to maybe throw down a 3-pointer here or there in little spot opportunities. He has a role to play, though. He does what he does.
Hasn't he won back-to-back NBL championships?
He won with not back-to-back. He's been to 3 consecutive finals because he won with the Sydney Kings. Then he joined the Breakers where they lost to the Sydney Kings in the final. Then he left the Breakers but popped up mid-season with Tasmania, who won last season. Now he's with Southeast Melbourne, so maybe they'll go on a run and he'll make it 4 in a row with 4 different teams. It's already unprecedented that he went to 3 finals in a row with 3 different teams. If you did it with 4 different teams, that would be insane. That would be almost as insane as Marko Stamenic, who still has the opportunity to go League and Cup double 3 seasons in a row with 3 different teams in 3 different countries over in the European footy, because he did it with Copenhagen and Denmark, did it with Red Star in Serbia, and now Olympiacos. Even though he's not playing as much as he'd like, Olympiacos is still in the cup and they're leading the Greek league as well. So, and the way Nottingham Forest are going, he could join them next season, and win the Premier League as well. Who knows?
I'd like to add Marco and Shea Illy to the name thing. Marco and Shea.
And Shea would be the dude if you asked me to pick out a dude from the weekend of the Kiwi players. He scored 20 in a win for Melbourne United, who are a little bit up and down, like a little bit more up and down than they should be. But I can't help but feeling that's a team that is built to peak in the playoffs as well. So, and Shaylee's a big part of that. And he just had a big scoring game, so good for him.
It is good to see that some of the best NBL teams do have a lot of Kiwis, and when the Breakers do win, it's usually thanks to a couple of Kiwis chiming in at least. Let's wiggle into Super Smash Cricket, where we have the Otago Sparks as the most dominant domestic team this summer. They are 6-2 in the Super Smash, and they were 6-0 in the HBJ Shield. So they are 12-2 this summer in domestic cricket. The next best HBJ Shield team is Central Districts on 3-3, Wellington on 3-3, Auckland on 3-3. So Otago Sparks in the one-day competition have 6 wins. No other team has more than 4 wins. No other team has 4 wins or more. In the Super Smash, Otago has 6 wins, and guess what? No other team has 4 wins. So the Otago Sparks are dominating domestic cricket this summer. And I've been rolling through these 2 format stats for the newsletter today, and we have the key player across both formats performing at the highest level is Eden Carson. In HBJ Shield, Eden Carson has 13 wickets at an average of 12. In Super Smash, he has 17 wickets at an average of 11. So Eden Carson, you could say, is the best player on the most dominant team in domestic cricket this summer. And that comes after she was very good at the T20 World Cup, but she's always been a really good T20 bowler, but she did get selection in the Rose Bowl for the one-day series against Australia. So she played in that series, which is like a culmination of her rise, because I think she's just a first 11 White Ferns cricketer regardless of the format. And her presence in the Rose Bowl reflected that, but now she's averaging 11 and 12 in either competition this summer, which is obviously pretty damn impressive. But the Sparks have a lot of different contributions throughout their team. Bella James came into the White Ferns squad on the back of that dominant HBJ Shield mahi, but she has a high score of 40, which I think was in the most recent game. Another pretty slick Bella James knock, but it's her highest score of the season, and she hasn't scored a lot of runs. So the leading run scorers in HBJ Shield, Bella James 293, Susie Bates 158. But in the Super Smash, Bella James has 105, Susie Bates has 148, which is exactly the same number of runs as Olivia Gain. Less runs, or slightly more runs than Polly Ingalls, who's been pretty damn impressive with 4 not outs in her 8 innings. But the best batter for the Sparks in Super Smash is Caitlin Blakely, who has consistently been very solid in domestic cricket. As far as the Sparks bowlers go, we got Eden Carson, 17 wickets. Kirsty Gordon, who is a English, not sure if she's an international right now, but she's from England. She's got 10 wickets. Then we go Emma Black, 9 wickets. Hayley Jensen, 9 wickets. Let me check who are the best bowlers besides Carson in the HBJ Shield. Carson, 13 wickets. Anna Browning, spinner, 10 wickets. Hayley Jensen, 8 wickets, then Emma Black, 7 wickets. So Emma Black has 9 wickets at 18 in the Super Smash and 7 wickets at 24 in the HBJ Shield. Anna Browning was the second best spinner behind Carson in the HBJ Shield, but her overs have been taken up by Kirsty Gordon, who has done a very good job there. As far as like who could step up for the White Ferns from this Otago Sparks team, because we've had Bella James, we've had Eden Carson, like they have put themselves in the White Ferns mix. Then we've had Polly Ingalls. I don't think she's played for the White Ferns yet, but she did get a White Ferns contract. So obviously watch out for Polly Ingalls, although I am aware of some very good wicketkeepers around Aotearoa. Northern Brave have Holly Top. Central Hines have Kate Gaging, I think. Wellington's got Jess McFadden. Canterbury has Laura Hughes. Otago has Polly Ingalls. Of course, Auckland has Izzy Gaze. So McFadden and Hughes are more mature wicketkeepers, who I think are the best wicketkeepers. But Holly Top, Gaging, and Inglis, well, Inglis is closer to the mature elite level. Top and Gaging are pretty crisp wicket keepers as well to watch out for. So behind Carson, Ingalls, and James, we've got Caitlin Blakely and Olivia Gain as two very impressive batters who can play shots all around the park. Gain is very good going over the offside. Caitlin Blakely is a bit more crafty in where she scores her runs, but she's always scoring runs for Otago. And then Emma Black can't be far off the White Ferns bowling attack, although the White Ferns did not select Hannah Rowe or Jess Kerr for the Rose Bowl series, both of whom are very good domestic cricketers right now. You could say Jess Kerr's the best domestic cricketer right now. Hannah Rowe's doing great stuff for Central Hines as well. Neither of them played against Australia, which was pretty weird. But Emma Black has the same bowling style as Jess Kerr with the in-swingers. So if Jess Kerr's not getting selected, Emma Black is probably down the pecking order a wee bit. And then obviously I think Anna Browning has good potential as well, but she just needs to grind away for a few more seasons probably. So who did I say? We got Gain. Well, this is in order of White Ferns intrigue. Blakely, Gain, Black. 3 players to watch out for the White Ferns, especially considering the Otago Sparks' success resulted in Eden Carson going into the White Ferns, resulted in Ingalls and James getting the call up as well. That's contrasted with the Otago Volts. Now, we talked about the Otago Volts in their road trip. A win in Christchurch, a win in Palmy, a win in Wellington. They get back to Dunedin and they have a loss against Northern Districts, which was the Cartony-Clark Century game. And then they lose to Wellington in Dunedin, which was, you get good Tim Robinson knock, good Nick Kelly knock, Ben Sears took wickets, and so on. So the Otago Volts, 3 wins in a row on the road. They get back to Dunedin, they lose 2 games. And I hope the wee chap who tried to take a catch, I think Lou Johnson hit a 6, and then this boy got up to take the catch, and unfortunately the ball went straight through his hands and hit him in the nose, which was a bummer to see. Hope he's doing all right. And if you're at these games, you got to watch out for the ball, because there's a lot of close calls and there's a lot of people getting hit with the ball. It's pretty damn dangerous, to be honest. So look after your kids, and if you're a kid, look after yourself and your mates. But very strange thing there with the Otago Volts winning 3 games on the road They get back to the Dunedin, they lose 2 games, but I still think Otago Volts are a very exciting team with Dale Phillips and Jamal Todd going crazy. Then you got Max Chu, Glenn Phillips now, Lou Johnson, and who else am I missing? Lou Johnson.
Georgeson?
He's not really a smacker. He almost got them against that Northern game. He smacked a few boundaries. Very good cricketer. Max Chu, Johnson, and Lockrose. We do love a bit of Lockrose. One of the best spinners in the Super Smash right now. Young lefty, 24 years old, but you've also got the mature lefties like Jaden Lennox. Very good bowler for Central, and also Frederico Walker. I did note Ben Palmare calling him Rico, which is, I assume, is a play on Frederick. So yeah, you can see why you might go with Frederico rather than Frederick. And then if you do want to shorten a wee bit more, which they do in cricket, you might just end up with Rico, because that's a cool name. So there's a little spotlight on Otago. We will expand this out. We've got lots of other players and teams to talk about, but fascinating stuff there. Otago Sparks dominating, and then to be honest, some goofy stuff happening for the Otago Volts, because their Alexandra games, they had a no result, a win, and a loss. So they were 1-1 in Alexandra. Then they go on the road and win 3 games. Then they come back to Dunedin and lose 2 games. So it's weird stuff going on there. But shout out to Otago Cricket. Have a lot of fun watching the Sparks. And to be honest, the way the Otago Volts bat, going crazy with some pretty good bowling as well. Hazeldine, aggressive, lefty. Matt Bacon, fantastic T20 bowler. Luke Georgeson does all right. Jacob Duffy's come back into the team and done well. Lockrose is their main spinner. I'd also add, I think Dean Foxcroft has now missed 2 games. So the games he this is it. I don't think Dean Foxcroft played in either of the Dunedin games. And his 7 wickets after missing the last 2 games still has him, amongst their leading wicket takers, and his 124 runs at an average of 41 is the highest Otago average, and he's, top 5 for Otago runs. So you could say that Otago have lost 2 games now that Dean Foxcroft got injured. I think he got smacked in the hand against CD off the top of my head. Yeah, and Palmy, or it could have been the Wellington game. So yeah, maybe Otago Volts just struggling without Dean Foxcroft, who was their best bowler and best batter, to be honest, when he got injured. So that makes a lot of sense.
Although they've kind of replaced him with Glenn Phillips, haven't they? So Glenn Phillips comes in and loses consecutive games as a big hitting, higher upper order, off spinning all rounder, like kind of the exact same role that Dean Foxcroft does. But T20 is a volatile sport. Sometimes it just goes that way. They are definitely a really, really fun team to watch, because, like you've said a few times, like even Lockrose is not just having a fantastic season as a spinner. He slugs the hell out of the ball, which you don't always get with the spinners coming. Well, actually, I think it's probably more common than the reputation, but. Well, you got Santner can slug the ball. East Sodi can slug the ball. Come to think of it,
Who's the other spinner who slugs the ball? There's only one.
Glenn Phillips.
Well, Glenn Phillips does it, but also the Beast, Michael Bracewell. Does it. And you got to watch out. You got to watch Michael Bracewell when he's playing cricket, especially when he's bowling, because when he's fielding, he's got the hat on, and the hat looks like 10 sizes too small for him. But then he's tinkering with the ball as spinners do, and it looks like Michael Bracewell is you or I with a marble in their hand.
Yeah. And
it's like, well, every summer when I'm watching a lot of Super Smash, watching a lot of cricket, you're like, okay, I see why he's called the Beast, because I haven't met Michael Bracewell in person, haven't seen him in person, but when you adjust for the way TV skews the stature and all that stuff, you're like, oh, these dudes aren't as big as they appear. But then when you see it relative to a cricket ball or a regular sized hat, you're like, this dude is an absolute unit.
And he's been just crunching the ball when he bats lately as well. He's had a couple of not necessarily. Well, he had a couple big scores, but also even a couple in there where it's like I think the most it would have been against Otago the other day where he comes in, faces like 8 balls, hits 2 sixes, 2 fours, gets out. Yeah. So it's a good time, not a long time, but it's definitely a hell of a good time. But Otago have those dudes as well because Dale Phillips has gone nuts at the moment. He's been incredible. He's just up there right opening the batting at the moment and just sixes all around the place. You know, they've got power throughout their order. They've got really good solid bowlers who are, you know, a little bit of a point of difference as well because like Hazeldine is a left armer, Lockrose is a left armer, and Hazeldene's another fun one, because he just feels like he's been let off the leash whenever he gets to bowl. They're just a fun team. They got a lot of good, exciting players who make cricket interesting because something is always going to happen. And you, I don't know if you'd say the same thing necessarily about the Sparks women's team, but I think the difference with them is that they're just good. Like they're just better than everyone else. They've just got a strong team who just play good cricket and win games. I mean, you mentioned all these good players some of them have got into White Ferns context. Some of them are pushing towards White Fern context. I don't even know if I heard the name Susie Bates, who's like the greatest female cricketer the country's ever produced, arguably. And she's not having to do what the Kerr sisters are kind of doing with Wellington, where you like these players are carrying the way by just being amazing every week and taking all the wickets and scoring all the runs. Susie Bates just has to be Susie Bates. It doesn't matter. They'll win whether she's, you know, they can win a game if she scores 50 not out. They can win a game if she gets out in the first over. They're just built well around them. But yeah, I will say like the Volts are a lot of fun to watch at the moment. They're an exciting cricket team full of exciting players.
And like Alexandra, that was a buzz over the festive period. They get back to Dunedin. They lose the games, but both teams are getting good crowds. University Oval in Dunedin, which looks like a lovely ground. We have Auckland and Wellington. Sorry, Wellington versus Auckland today on the Monday. So we don't need to talk too much about those games. I will note, though, Tim Robinson's scoring a lot of runs, and I like to see it because I invested some hot take shares in Tim Robinson, so we're back in Tim Robinson runs. And of course, Ben Sears in the Champions Trophy squad, I think he's took 4 wickets against Otago, so that was an impressive effort. Yesterday we had Northern Districts versus Canterbury. Canterbury, I believe, won both of those games. Let me check in with the table. So Northern Districts are 3-2. Canterbury are now at 2-4. A little bit of a comeback for the Canterbury men. Northern Districts are 3-2 in the women's competition. Canterbury is 3-3. Yeah, it's a quirk with the rained off games that. Yes, it's weird. So it's Northern Brave 3-2, Canterbury women 3-3 in the women's competition. Canterbury women have exceptional overseas contributions with Shikapande and Madeline Penner. But there are 3 youngsters that I'm watching for in the Canterbury women team. We got the previously mentioned Missy Banks, who sounds like she's a early 2000s rapper related to Missy Elliott, Missy Banks. We got Jodie Dean and Izzy Sharp. These are 3 youngsters in the Canterbury team who, like Missy Banks has had a fantastic summer so far, 25 runs at a strike rate of 125, second highest strike rate for the Canterbury woman, but she's also their leading wicket taker, 7 wickets and an average of 20. And the next best is Shikapande on 6 wickets. So Missy Banks has had a fantastic campaign as their leading wicket taker and aggressive lower order hitter. Jodie Dean and Izzy Sharp haven't scored as many runs, but they've both had consistent roles, and I'm curious if Canterbury women, because they have had a few wins on the trot. Let me just double check that. Canterbury women, I think they've gone win, loss, win. So they've had 2 of their 3 wins in their last 3 games, and I think if they're going to crack the top 3, I'd look for Jodie Dean and Izzy Sharp to add some more runs. Izzy Sharp has 53 runs at a strike rate of 100. She's aggressive, she's powerful in the middle order, but Jodie Dean is opening. And Jodie Dean, let me age check all these players. Jodie Dean's 22 years old, Izzy Sharp is 20 years old, and Missy Banks is 23 years old. So watch out for those 3 players, especially in the emerging talent bracket, because I think they could add some oomph to, they don't need to do a lot. That's the thing. You got Kate Anderson opening the batting, Shikapande, Penna. You're going to have Kate Ibrahim bowling a lot of overs. Penna bowls a lot of overs. Asmussen bowls a lot of overs. Pandy bowls a lot of overs. Gabby Sullivan bowls a lot of overs. So Missy Banks is their leading wicket taker, but she only needs to take a few wickets every game, not a whole lot of responsibility on her. Jodie Dean opening the batting alongside Kate Anderson, Izzy Sharp batting in the middle order alongside Ibrahim, alongside Pandy. They can just add, 20 runs off 15 balls, 1 wicket at 5 RPO. Those type of performances could be very useful for Canterbury, and obviously it would be amazing if they went above and beyond those performances. The Canterbury men, couple wins. Where we got? Oh, they've won 2 of their last 3. Canterbury women have won 2 of their last 3. So similar stuff there. Canterbury men, it's all about Matt Boyle. Leading run scorer, another solid knock against Northern Districts. He's got 212 runs, a strike rate of 157. Then you go into that middle order where Mitch Hay. Everyone hated Mitch Hay a couple of weeks ago. He's got a strike rate of 161 in the Super Smash, which is in tune with his career T20 strike rate. Remember, this is the thing about Mitch Hay. First class batting average of 48. T20 strike rate of 150 in his career. So it's just me putting together 2 different stats that tell me a story about a batter. So Mitch Hay, strike rate of 161. Henry Shipley, strike rate of 153. Kyle Jamieson, strike rate of 137. Ish Sodhi, strike rate of 153. That's a lot of batting oomph right there. Lower order. Middle order. Zach Folks hasn't quite smacked the boundaries yet. He's got a strike rate of 97, but the good thing about Zach Folks, he is holding steady. I'm open to him being the best bowler in a Canterbury attack. Like the best Canterbury bowling unit, you've got Henry Shipley, Kyle Jamieson, Willow Rourke, Ish Sodhi, Cole McConchie, and Zach Folks. That is an almighty bowling unit, which makes it crazy that Canterbury weren't winning many games, but they have turned the corner by the looks of it. Zach Folks, so the players with the most wickets, we got Henry Shipley, 8 wickets. Zach Folks, 6 wickets. Ish Sodhi, 6 wickets. Zach Folks he's just part of the excellent bowling attack, He's not like the youngster in an excellent Blackcaps bowling attack. He is in the Blackcaps bowling attack for Canterbury. And also Cole McConchie has the best average of all those bowlers. So it's a very strong Canterbury bowling unit that I expect to be doing a lot better, but they're doing pretty well. Obviously, with all those dudes back, there's no Angus McKenzie, there's no Michael Ray. They've dropped out of the first 11. And Michael Rippon's only bowled 3 overs in the whole Super Smash. So they haven't necessarily needed him. But that is, like, if we're talking about funky teams, Otago's batting unit, and Otago Volt's generally been a fun team, but anytime I get to watch that Canterbury bowling attack, especially when you're coming up against Northern as they did yesterday. Cartane Clark and Joe Carter in fantastic form. But then you've also got the young wicketkeeper Ben Pomare batting 3 for Northern and doing his best. Like, that's a tough spot. Cartane Clark and Joe Carter, they're in fantastic form. They're going to do their thing. Joe Carter looks absolutely delectable playing his shots. In fact, he just looks like Kane Williamson. If you watch Joe Carter bat, he is just Kane Williamson. No surprises. They're both from Tauranga. Similar, I think Joe Carter's only a few years younger, but you can watch Joe Carter bat and just think this is Kane Williamson. Every mannerism, every little thing he does, it's right there. In the same way, and the ICC, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but the ICC shared a video where they said 17-year-old Mason Clark from Otago, who dropped out of the team when Jacob Duffy returned, looks a lot like Pat Cummins. But he doesn't. Central seamer Toby Finlay definitely looks a lot like Pat Cummins. But Mason Clark doesn't. But that's the quality of seamers that we got. But this Canterbury seam attack, Canterbury bowling unit is very fun and interesting.
Yeah, right on. It's I likewise have been confused by looking at that team and just how stacked it is, because most of those guys have all played, like, of those bowlers you mentioned, who hasn't played for the Blackcaps? Maybe just the alternates. Because Folks has, O'Rourke has, etc., etc., etc. They basically all
has,
Ripon has, yeah, McConchie has. So they basically are all. I guess it's just old mate Mackenzie is the
Michael Ray too.
You know, a bit of Michael Ray. Like that's what I mean. The alternates, the guys who come in when those guys aren't there. I assume because the Blackcaps don't play the Champions Trophy is like midway through next month, and they do have a tournament before that. With like a little tri-series thing, but that's not for about 2 weeks or so. So I'd imagine the Blackcaps players probably get to finish out the Super Smash, right? Like there's...
I wouldn't bank on it. They might leave a few games early. Like, it's the same for the women. A lot of the under-19 T20 World Cup squad were playing domestic cricket.
Yeah, right.
So midway through the tournament, all the under-19s go, and then they're replaced by other players, experienced players, younger players, whatever it may be. So you do have a lot of ins and outs, but I mean, Will O'Rourke's the only bowler who's gone into the Champions Trophy there, you know, like the Kyle Jamison's not, Ishuri's not, Zach Folks isn't, Henry Shipley's not, Cole McConchie's not, so, and then the dudes with the lowest averages for the whole Canterbury bowling unit, Michael Ray, Angus McKenzie.
Yeah, so that won't necessarily harm them at all. So yeah, well, maybe it's not too late for them to go on a bit of a run then. If they're starting to find a little bit of form now, starting to get a couple victories, it's still a, you know, I don't know how open the table is. I'm not looking at the table right now to say this, but at least in terms of when you turn the TV on, when there's a game, men's or women's Super Smash, it's not often you're sitting there thinking, well, this team should batter that team. Like, it's a very, very even kind of contest where either team could quite feasibly win in any particular game. So, you know, you can definitely get on a run in this kind of thing. Maybe Canterbury is starting to do that.
The Northern Brave 3-2. Both Northern Brave teams are 3-2, I believe. Central District's women bottom of the table, 1-6. Central District's men, second on the ladder, 5-2. Cartane Clark's been in great form. That's been fun to watch. Rob O'Donnell, I think he's got the third highest T20 batting average for all New Zealand batters ever, aside from Chris Harris. Chris Harris has the best T20 batting average ever. But for current players, I think Rob O'Donnell is behind Dean Foxcroft and Devon Conway. I did talk about Ben Pomare getting put up in that number 3 spot. That's been fun to watch. We've got Walker's been good with the ball with his lefty spin. Don't think we've seen the best of Brett Hampton yet. So that, to me, that's a major X factor for the Northern District's men. Northern District's women, big overseas impacts. Shamari Atapatu, good with bat and ball. Amanda Jade Wellington's good with bat and ball. Nancy Patel can't catch the ball in the crowd. She's had 2 televised drops in the crowd, which has been fun to see, but she has scored some runs and taken wickets in her recent games after a slow start. Then we go CD. Tom Bruce, fantastic. Jack Boyle's fantastic. Curtis Heafy, great knock from Curtis Heafy a few days ago, especially because he hasn't necessarily scored quickly. He scores a lot of runs, but he doesn't score his runs quickly relative to the format. But his knock in Napier the other day was rather brisk, which was good to see from him, just playing good cricket shots, as they love to say. Blair Tickner's the best bowler for Central, but an interesting thing here is that Ajaz Patel has not played for the Stags. And they don't really need him, because Jaden Lennox is their second leading wicket taker, 8 wickets at an average of 23. Angus Shaw has also bowled in every single game. He's got 6 wickets at an average of 22, but Angus Shaw also offers 54 runs at a strike rate of 186. So Angus Shaw's doing a great all-round job, and then you've got Jaden Lennox, who is like Freddie Walker, he's a fantastic domestic spinner. So that's just an interesting wrinkle there for CD. Jack Boyle's now averaging 44, strike rate of 137. Tom Bruce is averaging 94 with a strike rate of 175. Fantastic stuff from Tom Bruce. As I mentioned, Toby Finlay's caught my attention. 3 wickets, average of 31, but he genuinely resembles Pat Cummins. And that's between, what did I say last week? I think I said Jock McKenzie, Toby Finlay, Mason Clark. Like, that's a funky group, and that doesn't include like the solid domestic seamers that we've talked a lot about over the years. Christian Clark, Matt Fisher. Muhammad Abbas is bowling a lot of overs for Wellington with his lefties, which is an exciting development. And then Central District's woman, Holly Armitage, is just dominating for them. She's their only batter with over 100 runs, and she's got 247 of them. There's no C.D. Hines averaging over 20, aside from Armitage. And then you've got Claudia Green, Ocean Bartlett, Hannah Rowe, all with 8 wickets. Jess Ogden made her debut in Napier, and she took 3 wickets there. So that was a good debut for her. So that's a lot of Super Smash. Anything tickle your fancy there?
I wouldn't say it was a tickling, because that would be an undersell, but Katane Clark's 100 the other day, coming off the back of what did he get, like a 90 odd the game before that, I think, as well. Like, for someone who actually hadn't scored a lot of runs in the season up until that point, kind of needed a knock, and then suddenly it's like, well, no, just like a click like that, here's some career best form. That was spectacular. Like, that was cool, because he is a fun player to watch. He can hit all around the he's got the 360-degree thing. He's got a bit of power, but he's also rapid between the wickets. Like, that was cool. That was good fun. And him and it was Joe Carteret, aka Kane Williamson's doppelganger. I don't know. That might be unfair on Kane Williamson, because we're talking about the greatest batter of his generation, but domestic Kane Williamson there with a massive opening run partnership. Like, that stuff is cool. It's always fun in these competitions where you get like, here's a crazy stat, like here's some massive numbers from that big old opening partnership or whatever, or those kind of little instances within the competition. Where that was definitely one of them. And yeah, Katane Clark doing a little bit of brutality.
Katane Clark's one of the... So we got these hyper-aggressive opening batters. Obviously, Tim Robinson is the best. Jamal Todd's on the radar. Dale Phillips is a very good all-round batter who's taken up the hyper-aggressive role for Otago. Canterbury Open with Chad Bowes, Tom Latham, know what to expect there. CD, we got Jack Boyle, who isn't hyper-aggressive, but he's scoring a lot of runs. Who opens the batting with CD? Who opens the batting? Will Young, maybe? Curtis Heafy is the other one. I wouldn't classify him as hyper-aggressive. Yeah, so Joe Carter's hyper-aggressive right now. But these very attacking batters, Cartene Clark is one of them. And the way he plays shots all around the ground is always fun to watch. Important note, he is KD Clark. The seeming all-rounder is KDC Clark. You got to keep that in mind. But Cartene Clark, he played Plunkett Shield last summer. Hasn't been playing Plunkett Shield this summer, so he lost his spot in that team. And in the Ford Trophy this season, he scored 70 runs and an average of 17, strike rate of 87. And then he's gone back-to-back with 90 and 100, which... If we go to his 10 games on Cricinfo, he had no scores over 30, and now he's got 90, 106, 31. So hopefully Cartene Clark's found a bit of form, and he can just keep churning out the runs, because I think, A, he's good to watch, but he's a cricketer who, with the ease at which he plays those shots, he can add to that very aggressive batting core. And if we move outside the opener bracket, then we're getting into guys like Bevan Jacobs, who are just very good. And, Shipley's been banging sixes. We've had Mitch Hay banging sixes. Let me just quickly check in with the highest strike rates in the men's T20 competition, because that might offer a bit more clarification in my mind. Highest strike rates... Michael Bracewell's the only dude over 200. Then we go Angus Shaw, Rob O'Donnell, Tom Bruce, Max Chu, Mitch Hay, Nick Greenwood, Chad Bowes, Matt Boyle, Dale Phillips, Ish Sodhi, Henry Shipley, Joe Carter, Bevan Jacobs, Glenn Phillips, Logan Van Beek, Brett Hampton. So the youngsters, Max Chu, Mitch Hay, Matt Boyle, Dale Phillips, I reckon Cartene Clark's there, Bevan Jacobs, Jamal Todd, Tim Robinson, Luke Georgeson, Lou Johnson, Will Clark, Jack Boyle, Muhammad Abbas. We've got a lot of good cricketers coming up the Blackcaps pipeline. And I think that's all for the cricketing segment of this podcast. We did tease a bit of Nando Pijnaker earlier in the show, and he was very good for Auckland FC in their victory over Melbourne City, 3-0, I believe. Auckland FC now second on the ladder. And I was going to say at that stage that Auckland FC have only conceded 9 goals this season, and they're the only team below 13. So Auckland FC has conceded 9 goals, and there is a slight disparity in games played, but they've conceded 9 goals, and Perth Glory's conceded 35. That's ridiculous. One thing that was... Shout out Ollie Sale, though. We do love a bit of Ollie Sale.
He didn't concede all of those, though, you know.
Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about, like, because we had Jesse Randall, that he made his, I think it was his starting debut, first start of the season for Auckland FC. And this is something we can't be overlooked with Auckland FC. They are developing local talent. Like Jesse Randall's come in. We had McKinley step in a few games ago. Who else did I have?
Louis Toomey, Adama Koulibaly getting a red card on debut a couple of weeks ago. You know?
Right, Koulibaly. And we also had Max Mata. And he started up front, which was, I thought, a interesting development there. He's not a youngster on the rise being developed by Auckland FC, but he is a Kiwi striker who, to me, he resembles Chris Wood in just that he's like big enough, but he's also quick and he's mobile. He's a good mover, but he's big enough and strong enough to hold the ball and get into those positions where he needs to score the goals. I was pretty impressed with Max Mata, especially when you're adding him to like Logan Rogerson and that attacking group.
I thought, having spoken about Nando Pijnaker already, it's the other guy who was most interesting of the it was Max Mata there, which is fitting because Max Mata and Nando Pijnaker seem to do everything together anyway. They've played at like it's like their third or fourth different club that they've played together at the same time, as well as I'll say it again, making their all-whites debut in the exact same game too. Like these two are just kind of a little bit joined at the hip. But Pijnaker's been amazing, playing pretty much every minute for Auckland FC this season. Max Mata's been stuck on the bench. And he was a little bit of an injury at one point, so he wasn't getting, he wasn't even in the squad for a few of those games at the start, and then he was getting 10 minutes maybe. And the thing is, they've got an import player in his position, so he was actually, before Guillermo Mai turned up, Max Mata was starting all of the preseason games and getting good minutes then. But he was it took him a little time for his opportunity to swing around. He got it finally against Melbourne City, and I agree. I thought he was pretty awesome in that game.
Max Mata and Guillermo Mai did play alongside each other against Melbourne City, though, didn't they?
Yeah, sort of. The thing with Max Mata's skill set is, I think there is a comparison to be made there with Chris Wood, is that they are similar players in how they operate. So Mata is not as big or as strong as Chris Wood, but he is a very good hold-up player. And you saw this when he was playing for Sligo Rovers in Ireland. Like, very good at holding the ball up, but he would probably drop a little bit more than Wood would like to, maybe in a way that Wood used to, but doesn't so much do anymore. Like, drop deeper to collect that, I don't know, the long ball from the defense, or the entry into the final third, as they might say these days, from the midfield or whatever. Like, drop in a little bit deeper, hold it up, lay it off, or he wins a lot of headers. And he is a bit of a merchant in the box in terms of poaching on. So he's not as good of a finisher as Chris Wood, but he's good enough. And so I think one of the tricks with him is when you've got, like we've seen with Chris Wood, when you've got that type of player, you do sort of need to play to their strengths if you want to get their strength out, because they're not necessarily the most versatile to play in other styles. So it's been a little bit of, because Guillermo Mai is quite different. He also does like to drop deep, but he doesn't drop deep, hold it up. He doesn't drop deep, win headers, flick-ons and stuff like that. He drops deep, turns on the ball, whips it out around plays, and maybe you get a similar result, but it's a different way of going about it. And he's not necessarily the poacher in the box as well. He'll drift around a little bit and let other players get into those areas, which we have actually seen at times. Like, Jake Brimmer's benefited from that, playing behind Guillermo Mai and then making runs past him into the area to be the guy himself poaching on a few of these chances. But yeah, Brimmer was out injured for this game, and they decided to mix it up a little bit with Liam Gillian playing off the bench for the first time, which, like, I'm a little bit surprised that hadn't already happened. I think he's the kind of player who is going to be equally impactful off the bench as he would starting. No reason not to mix it up a little bit, but I guess they're working with a winning formula, so they didn't want to change too much. Neda Moreno also dropping to the bench, so Logan Rogerson's back in there. Jesse Randall's getting the start, and Max Mata mostly playing alongside Guillermo Mai, but I got the feeling like Mai was the guy who was dropping in a little bit more to let Mata be the guy getting on the end of crosses, and that was working because Mai dropped deep and scored a banger of a goal. And Mata stayed forward, won a couple of headers, and also which both drew very good saves, and then also scored, poaching from a corner, hovering around the 6-yard box. So we saw a little bit of a different wrinkle from Auckland FC in their attack. This is not necessarily a setup we've seen a lot of before, outside of maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes of games, because there have been other times Mata's come on with Mai still on the field, and they've both played kind of as a front two, building out this combination a little bit. But we've only really seen that in glimpses at the end of games when they're throwing caution to the wind. Hadn't seen it from the start. Saw it here. Oh yeah, I quite liked it. Quite like the different angle. And I don't know. I mean, Jake Brimmer's really good, and Jake Brimmer comes back maybe next week, maybe down the line. Don't know how bad his injury was, but he's probably pushing for a starting spot there. Cam Howison's also back now. So he is someone who could also start. You can start in that Gallegos kind of role, or a little bit deeper, but he can also start in that Brimmer number 10 role. So they got options there. Gillian as well, frankly, could play through the middle if you wanted him to. Louis Toomey could play through in that role if you wanted. Like, they've got guys who can do that stuff. so they can mix it up. But it's good to see. I think this is quite valuable from Auckland FC is to see that they have a bit more variation in their attack now than perhaps we realized a week ago. Like they've been able to work that out a little bit more, add another string to the bow.
In my expert in football opinion, I prefer the striker playmaker dynamic rather than having Mai and Brimmer as like two playmakers in that attacking. Like I guess in theory, like one of them's the false nine type of stuff, but I just prefer having the striker and the playmaker complementing each other. So maybe I'm a bit old school with just a true blue striker, and then you put the razzle dazzle playmaker, which to me is beside them. Well, first of all, what role did Randall play? And then I think I saw Toomey, because I've only seen Toomey previously playing in the wide spots. Did he get a bit more central against City?
Yeah, he did. Don't think I can't remember when that was that they subbed him on. I don't think he got huge minutes or anything. But yeah, he was playing through the middle a bit more, which is more of his natural position. If you see him for the certainly for the Wellington Phoenix reserves back in the day, but especially when he was playing his best domestic football for Eastern Suburbs last year. Well, yeah, 2023 now, the year before last now. That takes a couple of weeks of adjustment every year, but that's much more. He is kind of like let him loose, playing off like at the top of the midfield and behind the striker, get lots of touches, drifting around. Sure, like let him move wide and collect the ball and whatever, or make runs in those areas, like a bit of a free license. But he's definitely, yeah, his best stuff for Eastern Suburbs was playing in that number 10 role, like as the kind of the focal point of their attack. He's not gonna have to do a lot to earn that kind of responsibility in the A League, obviously, but that's nice little positive development for him as well. Because I guess when you're one of those younger fringe players on the bench, you just want to be able to have as many different positions that you can contribute in as possible, because that's going to give you more opportunities to play, isn't it?
It is indeed. What role did Randall play?
So Randall basically did what Liam Gilliam was doing, left wing. I guess you could argue that their formation was a bit more of a like 4-2-2-2, but it's also just kind of a 4-4-2, 4-2-4, whatever, and with the ball out of the ball, whatever. These things, like
Yeah,
you got a look
football.
on your face there, but
Well, so I was
what I mean
thinking,
is when you've got the ball, your wingers are playing high level with the strikers, right? When you
yeah,
don't have the ball, they sit deeper, so you sort of have 4 and a 4 to block it off a bit more. That kind of thing. But it's really no different than what Gilliam was doing already.
yeah, you're right. So, because there's a lot of like in the footballing rounds, there's a lot of formation chat. It's like,
Yeah.
what formation are they going to play? What formation are they lining up in? But watching Auckland FC and then watching a lot of Phoenix, I don't think formation really matters because they just kind of rotate through positions, and it's like this is how we defend. This is the structure of our defense, but that can quickly change to something else defensively as well as looking completely different with the ball. So I, coming from outside football, I'm like, formation chat doesn't really intrigue me because it's just kind of like, okay, is he a wide player? It's like me with like middle forwards, edge forwards, small forwards. I just create positions a bit avant-garde, but like I think football, it's just I'm thinking, okay, Randall, he was a wide player in that game. Gillian has been a wide player. Max Mata is a striker. Mai is a attacking playmaker type of position, as opposed to no, he was the right side midfielder in a 4-4-2 that then transitioned into a 5 whatever, trying to break down the actual formation. But is that Randall's best position, you think? Because you did say he started in that wide role ahead of Gillian. So is Auckland FC better with Randall starting in a wide position ahead of Gillian? Can Randall play a different role? Can he do a Louis Toomey and play in the middle? Can he do other things? Or is it a case of in a full, like obviously full strength Auckland FC, none of them are probably on the field in the starting 11 and the first 11, which is great because that's how strong the squad is. But it kind of seems like, because I've seen Toomey play wide, seen Gillian play out wide, seen Randall play out wide. So they're all kind of competing for a similar role. And I think, as you said, to get the game time, it's the same with the Young Warriors. To get the game time, you're going to have to play a couple different positions because that increases your chances of getting on the field.
Yeah, on the formation thing, Giancarlo Italiano's talked a lot, especially through preseason, about how his teams like they'll like the media will ask him, so what is there going to be a change in formation? And he'll say like, we changed formations like 30 times during a game. You know, it's constantly in different situations. We're in different shapes, different expectations of what the players are. It's all so fluid. Like I'm sure top level coaches across the world have been doing this for years, but he's one of the first I've heard, at least certainly in the local scene, where they've actually been like open about the starting formations. Sure, you've got that, but like they don't stay in that shape. You know, of course, you're not going to. Everything is going to be players have license to swap around and move to different areas, and they're expected to do this kind of stuff. So it's all, yeah. It was nice to get the honesty from him, but also it opens a can of worms where it's like now the formations are just chaos. It just doesn't mean anything anymore.
But you still have this guy plays in a wide role. This guy
Yeah,
plays as
but that's the role of the player, which is gets to be a lot more telling of what the tactics are, is what you're asking each player to do rather than the shape. I guess defensive shape, you've got that. Because that's without the ball. So there's, but anyway.
But if you do want to talk the formations, then you got to go, okay, for this 10 minutes, they were playing in this formation. Then for 5 minutes, they switched to that formation, which is way too much. But the Randall Gillian...
When the right winger's got the ball, the left centre back tucks in, or the left, all this kind of, all the different flexibilities, which is just, it's too much. You can't keep up with that.
But that's the point, is that the left back's the left back. The right winger is the right winger. Like they're...
So rather than saying your left back was playing centre back, you're just saying, no, your left back his role was to tuck in, but he's the left back.
Well, it's more like, instead of, he was the left back and a back four, but then he became a left back and a back three, and he had the wing back there. Like, instead of all that, you're just the left back, which means you're a defensive player on the left side of the field, which to me seems like the most logical thing. But the Gillian, Randall, Toomey trio.
So Toomey's a little bit deeper, I think, in the depth chart. Gillian versus Randall is more of a specific two guys competing for the same position. Like Toomey can play minutes out there, but those two are specialists in that role. I think Gillian is the better player. I thought Gillian was the better player when they first signed, even though Randall had a little bit more of a profile. But Jesse Randall, I would say, I think his best domestic season was playing for Wellington Olympic back when they were winning everything, and he played as a left winger predominantly, and led the National League in assists that season. So he was pretty, he was a left winger, and he was pretty fantastic as a left winger. He can play up front. I've seen him do that. He's very, very fast, so it's a bit of a like running in behind kind of option. I don't think he's as effective there though. It can play on the right as well, same as Gillian can play all across the, I wouldn't say Randall I wouldn't put him in that number 10 role, whereas I think Gillian could do a bit of work there playing off another striker. But I would say Liam Gillian is probably, Randall didn't actually do a whole lot in that game, and it was nice to see him get the start. He didn't get a lot of touches. One of the first guys subbed off for Gillian. I think more that might have been a bit of a let's keep Liam Gillian on his toes in his first season in the A-League, and he's had some very promising good work. Like, everyone's been impressed by what he's done, but he hasn't really got the goals or assists. So keep him on his toes, mix it up a little bit. Also a bit of rotation because they are playing again on Wednesday night, so that's something to consider too. But it was very much like Randall just came in and did the role that Gillian was doing before, and I expect Gillian will probably win that role back again. But it's good to have the depth. It's good to have guys you can alternate in and out. And Randall didn't do much wrong. He didn't get a whole lot done, but it's not like he was making mistakes or giving the ball away or anything like that. Just didn't get a lot of touches. It was that sort of game. I mean, you know, goal from a set piece, goal from a long shot. I think City had more of the ball anyway, and so second half was a lot of just controlling the game with a 3-0 lead. So it wasn't that kind of game for him anyway, but he did it right. And the fact that he was playing at all, the fact that he earned that start shows that he's ripping it in training and keeping everyone competing for his position. He's trying to get himself in there. So good stuff. Good to see the depth being worked out. That's what they need. It's probably what the Wellington Phoenix need, because I've heard Giancarlo Italiano get that one out. Do we count that as a good name? He's an Australian coaching in New Zealand, so I
was
don't
just
know
about
if
to
it's
say
quite...
with young Marley Francois. I did mention Marley earlier in the show, but he's not a Kiwi, but he's playing for Auckland FC. And if I was going to
But we
take
do
that
have
one
a
back,
Manuleleua playing youth team
that's
footy
right.
for
There we
New
go.
Zealand, so we can
That's
still
right.
take that one.
But I was going to take Marley Francois out, so that means Giancarlo is probably out as well.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll have to find another one somewhere. So
Chiefy,
he's mentioned multiple times in recent press stuff about how, like, unprompted as well, about how he's trying to... The next thing he needs to see from his squad is getting a stronger bench so they can maintain like a 90-minute performance of being able to put impactful players out there, which probably doesn't align very well with a couple of weeks in which they've released David Paul, released Oscar Van Hadden, and released Mohamed Altai now most recently. But Altai's being released at a time when Finn Conchi's just come back from injury, and Van Hadden and Ball were barely playing anyway, and the transfer window is open, so I wouldn't be surprised if they've signed a new player or two before the next time they play. Those players won't be available, I wouldn't imagine, next time, but it sounds clear that they're working on something like that, trying to build out the depth, trying to have a good bench, the way that Auckland FC kind of already do.
Wellington Phoenix are playing tonight. Chiefy did say, though, that the Altai one was to get him back to his family in Australia, so that's understandable. But he's also mentioned a few times they're in the player market for an overseas player, but he also said he's got a couple of local lads training with the Wellington Phoenix as well. So, I mean, I'm all here for it. If you want to release some players, that's all good. Especially if and when you're just churning out the local talent as the Wellington Phoenix do. But also Auckland FC have done it, because we've mentioned Randall, Gillian, Toomey, McKinlay, and Koulibaly have all stepped up for Auckland FC this season. Most of them, all of them, stepping up from domestic football.
Toomey briefly had a thing at like lower league Finland.
But they stepped up to Auckland FC.
But he was playing domestic football beforehand. In which case, Cam Howison as well. Like, there's...
Yeah, I'm seeing young Kiwis being developed.
But yeah, all of those guys, and Joe Knowles as well as third choice goalkeeper. We haven't seen Oliver Middleton yet, young midfielder as well. Right. So there's a couple more where they came from. Cody Phoenix as well was on the bench for this game, didn't get on, but he's a fullback who think came through the Birkenhead system, but most recently playing for Auckland United. And it's funny because from Auckland United to Auckland FC, and it's also funny because his last name is Phoenix and he's playing for the other team. Exactly.
Speaking of formations, the Wellington Phoenix women had a good win, 3-2, comeback victory. I think they were 2-0 down, and there's no formations for the Wellington Phoenix women because they just go every which way, and it's a good way, especially when they are winning. And this comes after you just did a deep dive on the Wellington Phoenix women pushing for finals footy. They are now 5th, 6 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw. 3-2 in their last 5 games. Porirua Park is a fortress, a windy fortress. We do have a deep dive on the website, so I'm sure you're well stocked. So I've got to keep you reined in here. Aside from you do love I don't know what you call it, the goal from the corner kick, which seems a lot more prevalent. Olympico, which seems to kind of just be a women's football thing, which is all good, adds to the funk there, but it was a good winner. How about that? Especially I think it's a lot more useful in Wellington where it's windy as crackerjacks, and it's like a home advantage as you can whip in those crosses with the wind and really challenge the opposition goalie. Bit of mana in that victory coming from behind 2-0 to 3-2. So you wrote about the Wellington Phoenix. Is there anything that you learned from that victory that if you were writing about the Wellington Phoenix today, you'd be like, oh, I got to add that, or anything else that was just fell into alignment with your original views?
Well, you can't spell Manaya without mana, so there's a starter for you. The the crazy thing about that, because yes, the Olympico is definitely much more of not exclusively. You see them a bit, perhaps even a little bit more commonly now in men's football, because you're starting to get a few more sophisticated setups of everyone just crowding out the goalies and whatever.
It's not. I've seen a lot of this, and it's not sophisticated. It's just how many dudes can
No,
we get
it's
wrestling together in front of the goal, and let's just make it as hard. Like there's set piece coaches, and their solution is just get everyone tackling everyone.
yeah, the sophistication comes from the relative sense of before no one really cared, and now they care enough to say, get in the way. Like, just stand there. We're not seeing intricate in and out runs or anything like that. A little bit here or there. I like the one that Arsenal do where they start their guys at the back post and then they run near post, so the defender's got to turn their backs to follow ball and player from an opposite
But there
sides.
was I think it was Nando's goal. Rogerson is getting absolutely manhandled by the goalie, and he's just getting pulled down. He's getting ragdoll. And it's like, well, he's just doing his job. The goalie complained that he was like taken out, but he is like dragging Rogerson down, and everyone forgets about where the ball is. So I did have a little chuckle about that. But the Wellington Phoenix woman, what'd you learn? Anything new? Anything that solidified your opinions?
Well, what was I saying about the Olympicos? It is much more of a women's football thing because you shorter goalkeepers. It's just that simple. Like keepers are a little bit shorter, so it's a little bit easier to whip it over. But the thing about Mania Elliott's one, she's a right-sided player whipping that in with their left foot. And she was taking all of those right-sided corner kicks, and she was taking them all left-footed. And most of them were pretty good deliveries. Like that was a thing that got a lot of buzz about Michaela Foster was someone who, two-footed. She could take corners from either side and their in-swingers regardless. Well, Mania Elliott was doing that with swinging in. She didn't just swing in good corner deliveries. She scored a like 99th minute, whatever it was, winning goal from an in-swinging corner with her off foot. Thought that was kind of crazy because she doesn't really feel like a player she's very quite right-sided, likes to run in straight lines and whatever. Doesn't really necessarily feel like the type of player who would have that, but apparently she just does. So I learned that. Other than that, that game I think was much more about reinforcing the stuff I'd already sort of learned about them in the team, that they're like the good performance in the first half that was spoiled by a couple of silly concessions, one right at the start of the first half, one right at the end of the first half, and them not taking their own chances, combined with just a much stronger, more efficient performance in the second half, where they score a couple really nice goals, score 3 really nice goals, ended up winning the thing on the back of that. Do low-key think that Manuleleua was offside for her goal, but they created enough chances. They could have got one from somewhere else. They certainly should have got one from a couple of other chances that they created, particularly in the first half. So that second half thing has been a big emphasis of them. Like they've had those games, Sydney at home, Western Sydney away, it was Perth at home. Now this game, Newcastle. The other ones were sort of like 0-0 at halftime, playing really well, look like you should be much further ahead. They're not, but then they score early in the second half and ended up winning 3 games in which that was the case. All 3 of those games were broken open by long range goals. They at least mixed it up from that sense in this game. But yeah, the second half adjustments, the substitutes coming in and playing really well. Exactly what we're saying the men's team is trying to find, exactly what we're saying Auckland FC is pretty good at, although they didn't really need their bench for anything other than closing the door in the Melbourne City game. But They have used it in the past with a lot of their late goals. Wellington Phoenix Women's been doing the same thing all season. They got a really settled squad. It's the same. I think this is now 7 games in a row, something like that, where they've had the same match day 16, except for a couple weeks where Amy Daniele had a concussion and Brooke Neary came in as the backup goalkeeper. Well, the backup goalkeepers haven't really played much and certainly haven't played over that stint. So other than that, the outfielders on the bench are all the same players, but they rotate the starting 11 a lot. Sort of being able to say, for this matchup, we want Zoe McMeekins runs at right back, or for this game, we want Olivia Kelly doing that position, or whatever. So there's a bit of that, but very settled team, hardly any injuries, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, strong second half performances, playing very well up until the final whistle. Like this overcoming maybe a little bit of adversity, in this case a lot of adversity, because they were 2-0 down at halftime. There's the second time in the team's history they've won a game after being trailing at halftime. So dramatic victory, very exciting victory. Crazy how it happened, but in its way just a continuation of the good form that they've been in for a month, probably more than that, probably 2 months at this point.
Beauty. No more football?
No, I think we might need to do some rugby league.
I think we do, but I think I do have a sharper rugby league segment this week. And I'm going to start because the NRL.com, they did, I think they have updated their top 30 and development list. So in the minutia of the salary cap facts and figures and official rules, there is the top 30, then there's the supplementary list, and the supplementary list has now taken over from the development list, but you go to NRL.com signings tracker, is still the development list. So you got 2 different terms for the same thing, so it's a little bit tricky there. But NRL.com did update a lot of their contracts, and this helped me dive deeper into the Warriors' top 50. And I did a big yarn yesterday, Sunday. So check that out if you want a nice overview of the Warriors' top 50. But I'll start with Kiwi-NRL, because there's 3 lads that I was interested in making the top 30 of their respective teams. First is Ryder Williams with the Titans, who is a young half who is now top 30 for the Gold Coast Titans. He was 17 years old, still at school last summer, when he got a training development contract, supplementary list contract with the Gold Coast Titans. Now he's upgraded to a top 30. He's only got a 1-year contract, but he's a Maris Saints junior from Auckland who has had a significant impact with the Gold Coast Titans since moving over there into their system. He played under 19s. I think he played in the halves for Tweed in the Malmaninga Cup championship run for Tweed. They won that final, I believe. He was in the halves. And I'm curious to see if he's going to step up to Queensland Cup next season with the Gold Coast Titans. But it's a very fascinating spot for the Gold Coast Titans because they've got halves coming out the wazoo. Like Kieran Foran's not going to start apparently. Now, keep in mind, the Gold Coast Titans, Tana Boyd left the Gold Coast Titans to join the Warriors, which was a good signing for the Warriors, I believe, because the Warriors need a solid half with NRL experience, but the Gold Coast Titans have too many options. You got AJ Brimson, you got Jaden Campbell, you got Kieran Foran. Anyone else I'm forgetting, I don't know, but we'll see. Don't think so. But then you've got Ryder Williams coming up in the junior ranks as well. So the Gold Coast Titans already have like a bottleneck of halves in their NRL team, but you've got a young half from Auckland, Ryder Williams, on the rise, and I'm curious to see if he can settle into a starting Queensland Cup role in the Titans system, and then what happens there? Do the Titans re-sign him? Does he earn another contract, or does he move somewhere else? Because the Titans do have a bit of a logjam in the halves position. We've also got Salesi Foketi, who is in the Roosters top 30. He's a forward, Manuleleua Jr., who moved over to the Roosters a few years ago. He's come through their pipeline. And he is the next up dude from Aotearoa in terms of, like, you go Satili Tupanuia, Nofahu White, Siwa Wong, Salesi Foketi. All those dudes are from Aotearoa. All those dudes were Kiwi-NRL juniors in Aotearoa. Tupanuia was at Maris. Now he's with the Bulldogs. Nofahu White, Bay Roskell Jr., Siwa Wong. He was down in Christchurch with Burnham. Then he moved up to Auckland. I think he was a Manuleleua Jr., but he also went to Mount Albert Grammar School before being recruited by the Roosters. Now you've got now you've got Salesi Foketi, Manuleleua Jr. coming through. Can play edge, but he can also play middle. Very powerful, mobile forward for the Roosters. Then we also have Francis Manuleleua with the Knights. Papatoetoe Jr., who was initially, he left King's College, and then he moved to the Penrith Panthers, where he played, I think he played 2 years, bit of SG ball, bit of Jersey flag, and now he is in the Knights top 30. And who knows what position he's going to play. He's got a 3-year deal with the Knights top 30 contract. So he's gone from being like a Jersey flag. He started a few games at edge forward, a few games off the bench. He's gone from being under 21s of the Panthers to being top 30 with the Knights. Remember, he was a half in New Zealand. Midfielder for King's College first 15, played in the halves for an under 16 Warriors team. Then he goes to the Panthers, he's an edge forward. Who knows what position he's going to play in the Knights system. He could be an edge forward. He could transition to a very skillful middle forward. He might be a centre. He might even develop as a half because he does have that first 15 kind of playmaking background. So I'm curious to see how Francis Manuleleua winds up this season. I'd expect all three of these dudes to be in reserve grade. Foketi and Manuleleua definitely playing New South Wales Cup. Curious to see what happens with Ryder Williams up at the Titans. 3 hot takes for the Warriors for you. I think Ali Leotawa, Dimitri Vaimonga, and Leka Halasima, they will all be top 17 Warriors this season. I don't know if they'll be top 17 Warriors for round 1, but I think the best Warriors team has all 3 of those dudes in it. Probably Vaimonga and Halasima coming off the bench, probably Leotawa starting centre. I also believe Sam Healy will make his debut. He's the hooker they signed from the Sharks. I think he will make his debut at some point this season, behind Wade Egan and Freddie Lussick. And I also believe Taintua Piki will play at least 10 games this season. Got to make sure he hasn't done that already, because that would be less interesting, you know what I'm saying. Taintua Piki. One half of the Taharoa duo. He's played 5 games in 2023, 6 games in 2024. I think that's going to escalate to 10 games at least this season. I think most of those games are going to be at fullback. Who knows what that means elsewhere? I'm just saying. I think Taintua Piki's got at least 10 games of NRL footy in him this season. One last thing I've done here is, as I said, NRL.com updated their top 30, which means we got 3 bits of information. Options, contract options, club option, player option, mutual option, I believe are the 3 designations. We've also got the amount of players on the supplementary list. And then, of course, Australian media reported on a train and trial list for each team. So I've gone through the NRL.com signings tracker and the train and trial reporting, and I've got how many options, supplementary list players, and train and trial contracts does each NRL club have. The theory, the hypothesis, I guess, was that I was looking at the Warriors and I was like, holy shit, they got a lot of those dudes. But they don't have any options. So the Warriors have 0 options. Eels, obviously, they've got 5 because they've got the Dylan Brown. This only counts as one option, but they do have the infamous Dylan Brown player option until 2030, which is a ridiculous contract. Eels have the most options, 5 options. You've got the Raiders have 4. I'll just list the number of options. Broncos 0, Raiders 4, Bulldogs 0, Sharks 1, Dolphins 0, Titans 1, Sea Eagles 1, Storm 4, Knights 2, Cowboys 2, Eels 5, Panthers 0, Dragons 1, Rabbitohs 0, Roosters 0, Warriors 0, Tigers 3. Don't know if it's good or bad, it just is what it is. Then I went through the amount of supplementary players and train and trial players. The Warriors have 7 on their supplementary contract list, and they have 12 train and trial players. That gives them 19 combined, which is the most of any NRL team. 7 supplementary list players is tied with the Bulldogs for the most. 12 train and trial players is tied with the Roosters for the most. I've got a theory that I'm working on where I think that is a significant financial investment from the Warriors. Because you don't have to have 7 supplementary players, nor do you have to have 12 train and trial contracts. You can have less supplementary players, less train and trial contracts, and more part-time reserve grade contracts, for example. Because what happens is you're going to be on a train and trial contract over summer, then you're probably going to drop back down to your junior contract or your part-time reserve grade contract. But the Warriors have the most supplementary and train and trial contracts, which means they're paying all those dudes money to be around the NRL team this summer. I don't think the Warriors are doing anything cheap here. Obviously not, because they're paying more dudes, you know. So I think that's an important wrinkle when we're thinking about Warriors spending money, investing money in developing talent. It's one thing to just like sign young players and have a lot of junior teams, which they've done. They've added more junior teams. But they're also paying, like the only other team paying 12 train and trial contracts is the Roosters. And you all know about the salary sombrero for the Roosters. The Bulldogs have 7 supplementary development contracts, which, oh no, they've probably got a bit of money, but they only have 6 train and trial deals. So the Warriors are fully stocked in both those contract brackets. To me, that reinforces the idea of them being a development club, but it's not just about, like, oh, I think it's far better to have more players training around your NRL squad full time over the summer, but it's more expensive. So you can see how an NRL team that is kind of struggling for financials, they might save money by not spending train and trials, by not spending their supplementary list, but just having a bunch of part-timers on New South Wales Cup who can then step up to higher contracts. So to me, this tells me that the Warriors are spending a lot of money. They're investing a lot of money, but they're investing that money to players to get better. And I think that's an important reinforcement of them being the development club that I reckon they are. Does that stuff make sense?
It does, and I mean that's spending money on players who most, probably potentially all of them, maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, aren't going to play first grade this season. Like those aren't signing guys for that purposes. This is specifically signing guys for future purposes, developing them for down the line, doing that themselves, not trying to pick off players from other clubs, but bringing them into their own system and doing that. That makes perfect sense. What you're saying. Those are development club moves.
Onwards and upwards. That is the Niche Cast for this Monday, January 20th. Make sure you subscribe. We appreciate your support. Tap in, leave a comment wherever you're listening. and enjoy the Aotearoa sport. We'll be back on Thursday with another bonus podcast, chatting a lot of cricket, a lot of football, and whatever else pops on the radar as well. Big up. We appreciate you. Kia kaha, stay beautiful. Cheer, cheer.